We all know that it's unacceptable from Israel's perspective to have a country with a nuclear weapon that has called for the destruction of Israel. But as I emphasized yesterday, it is profoundly in the United States' interest as well to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. We do not want to see a nuclear arms race in one of the most volatile regions in the world. We do not want the possibility of a nuclear weapon falling into the hands of terrorists, and we do not want a regime that has been a state sponsor of terrorism being able to feel that it can act even more aggressively.
If there's one thing that stands out clearly in the Middle East today, it's that Israel and America stand together. I think that above and beyond that are two principles, long-standing principles of American policy that you reiterated yesterday in your speech, that Israel must have the ability always to defend itself by itself against any threat, and that when it comes to Israel's security, Israel has the right, the sovereign right, to make its own decisions.
Well, Trita Parsi is the president of the National Iranian American Council and joins me live now from Washington, D.C. Trita Parsi, President Obama is clearly worried about all this talk of war. He's saying, let's give diplomacy and sanctions a chance. Netanyahu, on the other hand, wants a much tougher stance on Iran. How are they likely to bridge that gap, do you think?
You're quite right. These are some severe differences of views, not only on the Iran issue, but also on several other issues in the Middle East, ranging from the Arab uprisings to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. On the specifics of the Iran issue, however, I don't think they are going to be able to bridge the difference between the American red line of not accepting a nuclear weapon in Iran and the Israeli red line of not accepting a nuclear capability in Iran, which essentially would mean enrichment. And on that, President Obama has so far stood surprisingly firm and not yielded his position.
And that's an interesting point you make. I mean, many observers point out the body language this time around, because instead of Netanyahu giving Obama another dressing down, there was a definite shift in tone from the Israelis, much more cordial. I mean, in terms of the bigger picture, do they see Obama as the man they'll have to deal with over the next 4 years because they don't see the Republicans winning the next election?
It's partly that, but also because of a realization that this very public conflict between the Netanyahu government and the Obama government is really not serving the interests of the Israelis or the Americans. And as a result, there's a lot of effort right now to put a very nice veneer on this relationship that nevertheless is facing some severe difficulties right now. But they don't have an interest in prolonging that or making it more public than it already is.
President Obama said today that both sides would prefer to see a diplomatic resolution over Iran. Obama said there was still this window of opportunity to resolve that. Do you think it's possible?
I certainly believe that it's possible to succeed with diplomacy. Diplomacy has worked in other cases as well. It's just that it requires a different kind of diplomacy, a much more patient, much more persistent and sustainable diplomacy than what we have seen so far. I think the Obama administration's initial effort was quite genuine, but it just didn't have the strength of standing the tests of diplomacy, because at the first setback it essentially fell apart. Now, the president himself seems to have the idea that in his second term he will have greater political space, greater political latitude to be able to pursue the type of diplomacy that can succeed. And he does also realize, I believe, that there really isn't any other solution to this issue than a diplomatic solution.
And of course he has an election to win before that. What about the timing of this in terms of the US elections, Trita? I mean, yesterday Obama spoke to AIPAC, the pro-Israel lobby. Despite the differences that you're talking about there between the US and Israel, I mean, Obama needs the Jewish vote, doesn't he?
He certainly is not going to try to lose the Jewish vote, but at the same time he also realizes that what the Israelis are trying to convince the U.S. to do by adopting essentially the George Bush red line on the nuclear issue would essentially guarantee a war, because it would eliminate any space for diplomacy. And heightened tensions will only result in a more destabilized energy market, which will get oil prices to soar, which will make it very difficult for the president to create jobs in the United States. And for a sitting president that wants to be re-elected, the most important priority he has is to make sure that the U.S. economy gets back on track.
All right, Trita Parsi, thank you for talking to us.